Finally use that sword the way it was meant to be used, boy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special Revelation Roundtable, talking about the new, controversial, but also beloved He-Man television series on Netflix. I am joined by good friend Eric from the Isle of Man. How are you, Eric?
Good morning. I'm great. Thank you.
And also joined from my brother from down under. It is Sean Fuster, aka Slick. How you doing?
Moon, I am doing very well today.
So I had a chance to speak to both of you guys privately about Revelation, and it really opened my eyes, both for the things that I was disappointed in, as well as some of the things I had a good feeling about, but I couldn't quite put into words. Wordsmith is always good for putting those feelings into words. And that's why I wanted to chat with both of you about this, because like the driving force behind the idea of this, I know it's a touchy subject for some people, but for a lot of other people, they really enjoyed it. And unfortunately, there's apprehension for a lot of those people. They don't want to speak up about it. So here we are speaking up about it, you know, civilly, politely, respectfully, both about the things we like and don't like. But that poll I put up on my YouTube channel, there was like 5 options. Did you love it? Did you like it? Are you in the middle, or, you know, undecided, haven't seen it yet? Did you dislike it? Did you hate it? And the majority was love it. That's what the poll result was. It was in the 30s, and hate it was in the 20s. So in the comments, there were a lot of comments of people who were emotionally compromised, Spock would say. There was very, very few comments from people who loved it. And one of the comments that really stuck out to me, guy was saying something to the effect of, "I'm afraid to say this." And then he shared what he really loved about it. And that's too bad that this is the world we live in, where if you really, really love something, you just feel like you can't share that feeling with a lot of other people because of all of the people who feel a different way. So, you know, I just thought this would be cool, both to talk about the things that didn't work for us and we're disappointed, but also for the things that we really loved. And Sean, there are some things that you really loved about it. And the way you explained it, I really, really, really love it too. I mean, they gave He-Man his Optimus Prime send-off in this. And I couldn't think of a more fitting way to kill He-Man. Obviously, you're going to bring him back. But if he had to have a death, yeah, it was fantastic. So, Sean, why don't you kick it off with what you loved about Revelation?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. To start on this, let me say this: the sentiment that you just expressed about, you know, not being able to say what you like and what you dislike without, you know, the hordes of the Twitterati coming at you, and the man babies that have filled this cup of water for me with their tears getting all upset.
That's only going to make them more upset, Sean.
Happy CM Punk Day, everybody.
Oh.
I am the voice of the voiceless. No. I look at it this way. I've gotten to the point where I don't say that I'm a fan of things anymore. I say that I like things because of what the word fan has come to be attached to in terms of the dialogue. So I don't say I'm a Star Wars fan. I say I like Star Wars. I don't say I'm a Transformers fan. I say I like Transformers. Because that way, when someone questions you about it, oh, what do you like? I like these incarnations, or I like this much of it, or whatever. And it tends to keep the temperature under the simmer point in terms of a conversation. Mainly because I don't have time for the negativity. I'd rather just skip past it and talk about the positive. So that's a preamble. And it's also my way of saying that when it comes to Masters, I have, you know, childhood memories of this series. I have a childhood connection to it. But unlike my interest in Transformers, Spider-Man, pro wrestling, I left Masters behind a long time ago. You know, it hasn't been a through line in my development. So when I watched the first episode of Revelation, I was blown away by 2 things. Number one, the fact that I got each and every in-joke, despite having not actively engaged with the franchise for almost 3 decades. And number 2, that I got each and every in-joke, despite having not engaged with the franchise for 30 years, which said to me, wow, they've not done a lot in the past 30 years with this franchise, have they? It's kind of stayed in amber.
Well, that's what's always been the criticism of the show. Like even with the animation, they just reuse the same thing over and over again. I love the Lou Scheimer Filmation show, but that's true both with the animation and with every single episode, basically the story.
And I think that's great, but it's also what tends to lead people towards this belief that anything you do with it is a desecration or ruins it or whatever, because everyone's expansive understanding of Masters is kind of locked into the borders that have already been set. So what I loved particularly about the first episode, to come right back to the question you asked me before I went off on this long tangent, sorry, Eric, is that, that by doing that first episode as almost a pitch-perfect modern reinterpretation of a Filmation episode, here's the villain of the week, here's the plot of the week, here's the MacGuffin of the week, He-Man comes to save the day. It's giving you Filmation, it's giving you those good vibes, but it's giving you the modern animation and the stylistic stuff that you'd like and everything. And then Skeletor sets Mossman on fire.
Yeah.
And it's that moment of, damn, this has just turned serious. And for me, this was the linchpin of the entire series, because He-Man loses his temper at the fact that his friend has died.
And of all the guys, I just want to add, of all the guys to kill off in that moment, they couldn't have picked, for the story they were going for, they couldn't have picked a more perfect one to kill than Mossman, because Mossman is Eternia.
That's right.
He is a part of Eternia, and the way he was handled in the Filmation show, he never hurt anyone. Now, yeah, he's attacking in this one, but he has to. I felt like that could still be the Filmation Mossman, where he will not harm anyone. But at this point, look, I have no choice. So of all the people, that was better than killing off Randor or Adora. You have literally killed a major special part of the planet. Now you're going to pay.
That's right. So He-Man loses his temper at that, runs Skeletor through with his sword. Skeletor's first comment is, "You finally learned what to do with that thing, boy." Now, think of all the decades of MOTU fans saying, Filmation would have been so much better if He-Man had just stabbed a few things or hit some things with his sword, or if they could cut each other. This is what the mature fans have been telling themselves for generations they want, right? Well, here you go, guys. You got it. He-Man just stabbed Skeletor right through. And by doing so, he gave in to his temper, he gave in to the villain, he stabbed the key into the magical lock, and now all the magic has drained out of Eternia. The metaphor of the entire series is literally, when you up the violence in He-Man, you take the magic out of He-Man. Congratulations, fanboys. You got what you wanted, and by doing so, you broke the series.
Yeah. That is...
It's like Death of Superman. It's like Batman Nightfall. It's that whole be careful what you wish for, because when you get it, you might not like what happens next.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate for the people who love Masters and wanted authentic Masters. I'm not saying this is for everyone. And
no, not at all.
I might
because
even
this is a fairly big metatextual leap to ask people to make. It's not a He-Man show. It's a show about He-Man. It's about Masters as a property. Like, even the fact that Alan Oppenheimer is voicing Mossman, and Oppenheimer is killed off on screen by the new Skeletor.
Yeah.
Like, it works on multiple levels. It's literally if we advance your childhood to what you claim you want it to be, you don't get that precious thing in amber anymore. It will literally break.
Yeah.
And when you break the He-Man mythos, what's left of the mythos? There's only the Teela story left to tell. And of course the Teela story then has to assume prominence, because she was always meant to be the sorceress.
Yep. Yeah, it's not a woke thing. She was always the princess that was promised.
Yeah. That's right, exactly right. Even when we're riding the boat past, Batman Merman, which was an awesome piece of casting, the cells in the background are the Crystal Castles and the Silent Sea from the Teela episodes.
Yeah.
Like, they know what they're doing. They are literally deliberately, they're not provoking the fan base. They're trying to provoke thought about the franchise and the mythos and the idea that, like I say, they want to talk about He-Man. They don't want to tell you a story about He-Man. They want to talk about what it means.
Yeah. There's so much more than meets the eye to this show, and I could feel it. I couldn't put it into words when I finished the first 5 episodes, but I knew there is so much between the lines. need to not just watch this again. I need to really think about this, because it is not a woke show, in my opinion, but it is filled with woke red herrings that is designed. I think it's designed to weed out or expose the people who just point woke at everything without actually really taking a close look and seeing if it is actually woke. If anything, I think it's an anti-woke show.
Well, it's like me making the comment at the start of this video about the cup of man baby tears. Like, that's me being deliberately provocative, right? You know, I'm sorry to everybody out there who was offended by it.
We'll see how that,
I'm not sorry.
See how that works out for you.
Maybe I'm not. But
maybe I'll put a poll up to see if people who love that and who hated it.
But it is
36% loved it, but they don't want to say anything.
Sometimes if you provoke these reactions as a creator, you're going to get interesting things. Now, does this mean that Masters was the right thing to do this with?
Hell
probably
no.
not. This was probably not the franchise to take these digs, to take these shots, to do this. But what else are they going to do? I mean, now they've just released, at time of recording, the clips for the new DreamWorks CGI He-Man show.
Yeah.
And everybody's upset about that. So they just can't win.
Well, the people who have, and that was a chat we had, private chat, that have the bravado to speak up are upset about that. But that chat we had has really changed my opinion of when you see that big, massive outpouring of negativity, it's actually, it's the minority. It's the minority love to speak up, and it's the majority who are just enjoying things going, I just don't have the time for it.
Well, it's the old thing about, the detractors are always going to have the loudest voices, people that just enjoy something and are content with it, are happy to enjoy it. But, the internet's made it clear on many occasions that the vocal minority are usually the ones that are most negative, unfortunately.
Well, think of it this way. An empty bucket, like a bucket that doesn't have many people in it, makes more noise because of the echo.
That's a good point.
The minority is always going to make more sound than the majority. So the majority is just sitting there in the bucket going, cool, we're in a bucket. This is awesome.
So, Sean, you didn't necessarily, you liked what you saw, but it's not what you would have done with the property. And
oh, God, no. No, I would have done that first episode for 6 episodes or 10 episodes. Like, I'm not defending this in any way, shape, or form. I guess what I'm doing is I'm saying, this is what... Let me try that again. There's lots of people out there that are angry about this. I wonder whether they understand why they're angry. They may not truly be able to sort of like push through the levels of static, childhood nostalgia, attachment, upset, aggression, and really pinpoint what it is about this that ticked them off. And so they react to superficial things like Tila's haircut or stuff like that. The reason that I would wager they don't like this, those who have reacted so negatively, is because it is very much poking at a long-held belief that He-Man would be better with violence. And the message of the show seems to be, add violence, lose magic. They don't like being told that.
Yeah.
That's a very Lou Scheimer thing. Like, that's the sort of thing that you could have Orko or Lukey saying at the end of an episode of He-Man or She-Ra, right? The more violent you are, the less magical the world is.
Yeah.
And that's to me the message of this series, but it digs at people on a level that, like I say, some of them may not consciously realize. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, because not everybody is used to engaging critically with a text.
It's something that really resonated with me personally, because for years I've been doing videos on subject matter I feel as though it's not appropriate because it was born from a place of magic, of childlike wonder, of wholesomeness. And so that's why I've never felt comfortable with adding profanity or violence or sexual content to any of the subject matter that I work on. Now, it's all about context, right? So if I'm talking about an R-rated movie with my pal on my movie review channel, then that's a different context.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking about He-Man, I'm not going to put in, like a head getting decapitated and blood squirting out of his neck. And that's not a diss at people who do that. I'm just to each his own. What has happened to this phrase, and why has this mentality gone away in the world?
And I guess that's what I'm trying to say here, is that I'm not trying to be critical of the series, nor am I trying to be critical of the people who have opinions in either direction of it. I'm saying that as a critique of the series, its purpose was to do this.
Yeah.
It was to say, when you give a violent He-Man, we, the writing team, say this is the consequence of that. We, Mattel, say that's the consequence of this.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were left up to me, I would have done that first episode over and over again, because I enjoyed that first episode right up to the bait and switch at the end. Sorry, I shouldn't say bait and switch. It's going to give the YouTubers something to work on. Right up until the revelation, that's a better word, at the end. But if you do that, that's the 2002 series.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That, unfortunately, commercially didn't work.
It tanked.
That was, coming away from it. I mean, that's some, I have to say, very respectable and deep and very concise and accurate analysis, Sean. That was actually very amazing. It kind of thinking like, wow, I've been wrong all this time.
That's why I wanted you. That's why I wanted you to talk to him, Eric, because we had very similar thoughts when we chatted, and then after.
Well, you're wrong, Eric. It's just it's different.
Well, I'll tell you. So for me, and I come from this from a slightly different perspective, because for me, when I was a kid, Masters of the Universe was forbidden fruit. It was something I saw when I was at a friend's house. I didn't have any of the toys. My mom was such that anything demonic or monstrosities, anything like that. Like, she took one look at Castle Grayskull and Skeletor, and it was like, that's demonic. That's not my house. So yes, yeah. So it was always kind of one of those things out here I was kind of interested in. And I remember one from when I was a kid, and I'd seen some episodes. I don't know that I've seen them all. I would imagine not. But I have fairly good memories of this. But from whenever it went off the air in, what was it, 84, right? 84, 85 to,
something like that.
Yeah. And they had that one brief resurgence where that was the He-Man in space and all that stuff.
You should never give dates out when you're talking about old He-Man episodes. Apparently, that'll get you.
Yeah, right. Well,
you'll be in more trouble than I was for when I said at the start.
Well, I've covered myself and said that I'm not. I was never a huge fan.
Just to be clear, He-Man, She-Ra was 85, 86.
There we go. So anyhow, the I vaguely remember the 2000X stuff. I remember it being on TV. I remember seeing it in store shelves and thinking, "Oh, cool, He-Man." That was kind of cool stuff. I never bought any. So I have I would say a surface level connection with He-Man from just seeing the old Ludsheimer show and, understanding that they always had the lesson and it was always very moral based. And I always respected that. Like, when I think back about that show, I always thought, that was one of those shows that did a good job kind of really having kind of a constructive lesson for kids and things you could take away with it that were a little bit more than, don't swim in a pool when there's lightning striking, that kind of stuff, the G.I. Joe stuff, or don't get in refrigerators, kids, that kind of thing. So
when you're laying down a claymore, front towards the enemy. I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
So, I learned never to ollie over live power lines on my skateboard, thanks to G.I. Joe. But no, I think when you look at He-Man, it had some more significant sort of moral lessons there. So when I was watching the show, I was immediately, and I think I even said this in the commentary, I'm very impressed. Like, technically, I think it was a very well done show. It's very well worth, I think, another watch. Just on an animation level, it just looks stunning. I mean, that's the kind of thing I think if my 9-year-old self had seen that, it would have been, instant head explosion. But what struck me immediately was not so much the more complicated themes as much as, and I'm guessing here, what I think some of the fans kind of immediately turned off or turned away when they felt like some of the characters were so out of line with their original incarnations. Like the one of the big things that kind of turned me off was here, Teela's been this loyal subject, and she was, essentially Man-at-Arms' daughter, kind of adopted, I guess. and for her to turn around along with the king, and I get that they were felt betrayed, but such an instant switch. And I get it. There's a dramatic level in the theme that you have to do, but there were times that I didn't feel like I was watching the characters that I remember, not the show and the theme and the location. That was all great, but it turned it around. I felt like this doesn't seem like what Tila would do to me. And that was what was interesting, is hearing your analysis of it and thinking like, on that deeper level, tapping into the idea and the themes of Eternia and the magic. That's very interesting. And I hadn't really thought of it along those lines, but it was enough. The character breaks and the way that they would just turn on their heel and flip flop basically just didn't seem as much. There didn't seem to be as much of a moral conundrum there with that. It was more. It felt like a temper tantrum. And I think when I'm looking 100% on that. And when I'm thinking like in terms of writing, I think that was the part that kind of was like a whoa, that like wow, okay. Everything else, like I think it was a great story, and I think it was extremely well done. I think it's those little bits that they just didn't quite get right, that didn't quite resonate somehow. The Mothman thing.
I'm going to see you on that, and I'm going to raise you this. I agree with you 100% that it was turn on heel temper tantrum. I propose that that's deliberate. It's not good, it's not well executed, and it's not well thought out. So I'm not defending it. I'm saying that it's not a bug, it's a feature. If my theory is correct that it's the whole add violence, remove magic, lose He-Man, lose morals, then without the moral center, everybody reverts to their baser, worse instincts.
Yeah, I see.
The show's trying to say that Adam needs to be there for everybody to be their best, to be lifted by him and inspired by him. His presence makes everybody better. You remove him from the equation, and everybody turns into an idiot and a jerk because they don't have their best selves, which is why X number of years later, when they all get back together, you have moments like Orko and Evil Lyn lifting one another because they have no choice but to lift themselves, but to lift each other, because He-Man's not there to inspire them to do it anymore.
That's an interesting idea.
Not good writing by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's deliberate.
That is a good point. It's really essentially what you're saying is painting He-Man and Adam as the moral center point of Eternia. And
when he falls and is flawed, that leads to other things. Like, to me, the closest analog that He-Man has in all other fiction is Captain Marvel / Shazam. Young person turns to old person with magic words, empowered by lightning, is incredibly moral and wise and just and strong and everything. If you look at any story they've ever done about Shazam where Billy loses his morals, it has the same sort of feel as this.
Okay, yeah.
Because Kevin Smith is such a big DC nerd, kind of feel like maybe he was writing a Shazam story more than he was writing a He-Man story.
Yeah,
if you look classically at like the allegory, the comparison is, if He-Man is Billy Batson, then Tila is Mary Marvel. And Mary tends to turn evil in every incarnation of the story where Billy is removed from the story. And Freddy, Captain Marvel Jr., is Orko. He pretty much tends to die in every incarnation where Billy is removed from the story. And look what happened here, folks. And also dying in hell is also Freddy's thing when Billy's removed from the story. And oh, look, Orko died in hell.
Yeah. I will say one thing. I mean, just talking about overall quality of episodes, that episode with Scareglow in the underworld was awesome. I think of all of them, that was like, wow, they really pulled it off well. And that was one of the characterizations that I thought really worked well, was repainting, Scareglow as this Hades kind of character almost. I thought that was terrific. Yeah, I mean, just giving credit where credit is due.
Very fitting. Very fitting for that particular character who never had any animated presence either in the original or in the 2000X show, and to finally have him show up, and not just, Clamp Champ was very disappointing. I was very pumped about finally seeing an animated Clamp Champ because he never made it into the 2000X, and blink and you missed him. But it was nice that they actually gave Scareglow a major purpose. He's not just a henchman standing next to Whiplash.
Michael, I'm going to say this. At least you've got Clamp Champ on screen, all right? My boy Rio Blast is still MIA.
My boy too.
Still bitter.
He's my boy too. And please, the proper title, Marshall Blast.
Yeah.
In my headcanon, the mentor of Brave Star. Eric, you mentioned the morals of the story, and I think maybe that's another reason why this is so emotionally charged, much more so than the other cartoons that people grew up in the 80s, because Transformers had, some morality to it, but for the most part, it was a fun action show. And same with G.I. Joe and all of them, Centurions, all those cartoons. He-Man was the one where the episode ended and people were, there was a hug, or there was the moral lessons of talking about love, respect, self-sacrifice. This show had the courage in a time where most shows, they had fantastic, talented writers on them who wanted to add more than just a toy commercial show. But He-Man was the show that had He-Man standing there saying, if you've been inappropriately touched by somebody, then you need to go to your parents or your teacher, or, like they bring up, like it might have been your parents, or they allude to it. If that is, go to your priest, or you need to go and talk to someone, all those very serious things that maybe the parents haven't had, they haven't decided to talk to the kid yet. It's not time yet. And there's He-Man talking about these very deep, powerful things. And you might forget that episode, but the lesson and the feeling remains there. So I think more than the other cartoons, He-Man was the show that really touched the heart and talked about love much more than a lot of the other boys shows, at least. So add violence, lose magic, but maybe also in a sense, add violence, lose love. And I had the same issue, Eric, that you had. Randor, totally out of character. That made no sense. Tila, that made people being angry at the death of this wonderful human being, Adam, and then you find out he's He-Man. That makes him much more wonderful when you find out who he actually was. The anger made absolutely no sense. Like this, they're sad, yes, be sad, but angry for yourself is just really disgustingly self-absorbed and selfish and egotistical. Add violence, lose magic. Add violence, lose love. Where's the love? Where's the my poor son, and how must all of you be feeling? Because he wasn't just my son. He was, to Man-at-Arms, basically your nephew. To Tila, he was basically your brother. My God. Tila, he was basically your brother. What's going on here? So like Sean said, no, it's not good, but it is more than what you think it is. It's not just bad writing. It was trying to tell one of those lessons. Definitely not the way Lou Scheimer would have told it. I said right from the start, when not everyone, but there was quite a few vocal people going, yay, Kevin Smith, this is going to rock. And I remember thinking, is he the right guy for the job? I don't know if I've seen a lot of entertaining Kevin Smith stuff. I've never seen anything from Kevin Smith that hit the heart quite like many of Lou Scheimer's episodes did, both in He-Man and especially in Brave Star and even in She-Ra.
He did, and if I'm wrong here, I'm sure people are going to jump on me for it. He did a Daredevil series, if I'm not mistaken, that was actually quite good. Wasn't that the one where Matt Murdock turns away from the city and then goes out and goes on this discovering himself track? Was that the one he did? I forget.
No, different one.
There was a different one. Okay,
but it was a different one. This is the one where he was confronted with a baby that might not have been the Antichrist, and it was playing onto his Catholic guilt and everything. But
I remember whichever one that was, and I remember being very impressed with that storyline that he'd written, and I remember it kind of touching on some of these moral themes like that. So I think that is definitely something Kevin Smith can do. I mean, I think the guy's great. He definitely has a flavor with his View Askew stuff, and all the Clerks movies and everything have a kind of crassness about him that I think people are immediately what they think of when they think Kevin Smith. But I think the guy's legit a pretty talented writer. I don't know why, like some of the beats that they hit in Revelations were odd. But I'll be honest, like after hearing your analysis, Sean, I think there was a lot more going on there than those surface level, surface level indiscretions, could we say, that mean a lot more than I think a lot of people realize, myself included.
I think the series made the cardinal sin of committing to a theme and writing to a theme rather than writing to characters. So, we all hold up Watchmen as one of the greatest pieces of comic book literature ever made. But it's Alan Moore writing to a theme. The characters are puppets. They are in service of the plot.
Yeah, he invented them out of thin air. They didn't exist before he came up with this idea.
Exactly, Michael. And that's exactly where I'm going with this. It's okay to write to a plot when you are creating characters who exist purely to service the plot and the machinations of the plot. When you take over something that has established characters, you have to think about writing for the characters too. And I think everybody here fell really in love with their theme, whether it be the one that I've proposed or whether it be something else. They aimed for that theme. They stayed with that theme. And if they had to, knock a few rough edges off the characters or make them do things in the moment that weren't quite right, well, we'll say they're traumatized and we'll move on. Like, you know what I mean? There's that quick, we need to get everybody in place at the end of episode 1 so that we can get to the story we really want to tell from episode 2 onwards. And again, I applaud the idea. I don't know that the execution was anywhere near as good as it could have been. I don't know whether it needed more time, whether it was simply the wrong story to tell with Masters. Look, I enjoyed it enough, but it exists in a multiverse, This isn't the continuation of Filmation. This isn't the continuation of 2000X. It's just, here's a He-Man story. One of the best He-Man stories I've read in the past couple of years is the He-Man Thundercats series, the crossover comic. It's got near identical plot beats, including He-Man getting killed. And people love it. People absolutely love that series. They praise it. And as well they should, because it's damn good. It's a better executed version of this same concept.
It's a strange thing. And, comic fans and people that have just been reading comics and aren't necessarily as much into the films, I think they've been exposed for years after, character after character, tweaks and, examples and incidents of characters going against the grain and changing fundamentally and then changing back and all these evolutions, which it's funny because whenever you talk about moving media, I guess, whether it be animation or movies or whatever, there seems to be this ideology. It's like, well, that's not the character. The character never did this. The character never did that. And it's like, and they'll reference the comics. And I'm always like, the comics are those are the least consistent. Things change all the time in comics. Even like, look at one of the best Joker stories, I think, in recent years, when they revealed that there had been 3 different Jokers and, that sort of stuff. That was genius. And so it's like, well, you can't really even say that this isn't the Joker. Well, there's more than one Joker,
That's right.
So it always kind of cracks me up. There seems to be this inherent rigidity with fans where it's like, well, this isn't the defining character. This isn't this, or this isn't whatever. And it's like, well, tell me what that defining character is. Are we talking about Golden Age comics? Like Superman, for instance. You talk about even going decade to decade. Yeah, Superman is completely different from decade to decade. Even in the 90s, he was completely different than he is, in the aughts and now. And so when people would go back to Man of Steel and say that's not Superman, and Christopher Reeve's Superman is Superman, I agree. I love the '78 movie. That's the first movie I ever saw in the theater. But that was the '70s Superman. That's not even the '80s Superman. Yeah. So it's like, whenever I see that and I hear people griping about that's not the character, it's like they've always changed.
I'm the biggest critic of modern day Batman.
Yeah.
I refer to him as the weeping orphan in paramilitary pajamas having a tantrum.
Yeah.
I despise modern Batman so much.
Yeah.
To me, Batman is always Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Alan Grant, Norm Brayfogle, grey suit, blue underpants, helping victims by day, beating up criminals by night.
Yeah.
That's my Batman. But it's my Batman. Nobody can ever take that away from me. Nobody can ever change that. Just because he's now running around basically as a 1%er in a tank beating up poor people doesn't invalidate my version.
No.
It's just, you can't have your version last forever.
And that's the thing is I think, and it's kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, Mike, is that in He-Man's case, because there haven't been as many different examples, it's been fairly much, okay, there were the comics that came with the figures and that were very much different than the Filmation series, but then you had the Filmation series and then the later, I think it was Deke or whoever it is, did the Space He-Man and 2000X. But really that's not as much evolution of that character. And so it makes me wonder if really when people turn around and say like, oh, that the character's all wrong, even myself, it's really just because there haven't been as many versions to kind of sink your teeth into and to digest.
Yeah. No one bats an eye at the latest Batman reboot. They just go, okay, another one. Even Bond, like to go to a non-comic toy property, cartoon property, Bond. When they recast Bond, there's not an uproar. Because it's just, okay, here we go. So with the 80th He-Man reboot, it'll be okay. It won't be as, but it's just, I understand the frustration because, I mean, I experience it almost with every single reboot. I just experienced it with Snake Eyes. The potential was so much higher than what the actual finished product was. Like, even with Snake Eyes, pretty fun action movie. Not G.I. Joe. It's not Snake Eyes. It's false advertising. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. And some people just have the ability to watch it and go, call them whatever you want. It doesn't bother me. It's, you know, it doesn't make me angry. Yeah, they keep calling him Snake Eyes. It didn't bother me, even though to me, he's not really Snake Eyes. Because when they called that other dude Storm Shadow, I went, yeah, he's Storm Shadow. And just able to kind of bob and weave, duck and duck, dive, dodge, whatever the dodgeball rules are. That's kind of the way I navigate these reboots. I'm like, oh, good, 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 bad, 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 good, good, good. But one thing I really wanted to talk about, though, is He-Man's death. The Optimus Prime got launched into legendary status, I think, because of his death in Transformers the movie. Without that death, he wouldn't be what he is today. And so I think He-Man finally got that Optimus Prime death. And I haven't seen too many people really discussing the death. They sure talk about, oh, he died and that sucked. I can't believe they killed him off twice. He hasn't been killed off twice. He's not dead. I thought it was very clear that when Adam got stabbed in his side, there's a reason why someone gets stabbed in the side in any movie or comic or show. It's because it's not a lethal blow. Shot through the head.
They've got 4 months until the next episode is coming out. That's why. Right.
Alex Murphy getting shot in the head is a death shot. It's a death blow. And even sometimes you can get shot in the head and survive. Regarding Henry, anyone. But for the most part, because it wasn't right through the forehead or right through the heart, it's because he's mortally wounded, but he's not going to die. It really took me back to when I was a kid and I saw Transformers the movie. And everyone was crying when Prime died, and I probably was too. But I distinctly remember this feeling of what a death. I wasn't, completely destroyed that he had died, and it ruined the rest of the movie for me. And, I enjoyed the rest of the movie. I love Hot Rod and Rodimus Prime. That moment where he becomes Rodimus Prime and Optimus Prime forgives him and endorses him is very important. If Prime can forgive Hot Rod, why can't everyone else? But that was the death that Prime needed, the self-sacrificing death. And I felt like He-Man got that in this. And you can disagree with the way they got there all you want, but the fact of the matter, and you can also disagree with the fact that he lost his temper. But like Sean explained, in that case with Mossman and Alan Oppenheimer voicing him, if he's ever going to lose his temper, I would say that would be it. When he dies, he sacrifices himself to save everyone. And my God, that moment where everyone realizes the secret. I'm getting chills just thinking about that moment, because Skeletor, he's just a boy. And Tila, what? And everyone's just, what? And that look Adam looks back is just so perfect. Absolute picture perfect of Adam looking back. And there's so much said in just this animation of Adam. His body language is, he's kind of sad, he's sorry, but he's strong, he's noble. He has to do this. And it's so absolutely perfect. And he dies and he goes to the attorney in heaven. He's rewarded for a lifetime, not just that moment, but a lifetime of self-sacrificing love for everyone. And also kindness. He never even tried to kill any of the bad guys. He always showed compassion to the bad guys too. He was the best of us, the absolute best of us, the guiding light, truly the magic of Eternia. And so when he dies, he's given this reward. I love that he chooses Adam as his eternal form instead of like all the other He-Men chose their big, super powered versions. King Grayskull, I guess, was always like that. But the fact that they come and ask for help, and Adam says, "Okay, I'll come," because the other guys go, "There's no more you could give." This is the important part of the death, that if you just ended at, "Oh, he died, that sucked." No, there's so much more. Read between the lines. There's more than meets the eye, to borrow the tagline from the other toy line. There's more than meets the eye to He-Man's death. He didn't just die. He was rewarded. His soul, his spirit was rewarded with this beautiful gift. And he gave that up too. When the other He-Men go, "There's nothing left to give," Adam goes, "No, I got a little bit more." And when he says, "I can give up basically my soul," that blows me away. Who in any type of literature, whether you go serious, the greats, Shakespeare, anything from history, who gave up their soul, not just their life, but then went, "Wait, I've got just something left after that. It's all I have. And I'll give that up to the other He-Men, who are also the best of us, the absolute pinnacle, the light and the magic." They stand there and cross their arms and go, "No way, buddy. I'm cool in my heels. I've paid my dues." And it's only Adam in the entire universe who goes, "I got a little left to give, and I'm going to give that too." That makes him truly, in that moment, more than ever. Hate this show all you want, but that's the moment it made Adam the master of the universe.
Beautifully said, Michael.
Yeah, well said.
I think we agree with you all. I think it does tie into the whole theme of this thing of him being just so special and so good and so awesome and so pure that when you remove him, well, your garden's pretty cruddy without the main flower in it,
Yeah.
It really is beautiful in that regard, and it does step up to the plate of Prime's death. I don't know whether you guys know this. I think I've told you before, Michael. You probably know this already, Eric, but Optimus Prime's death and death scene were uncredited rewrites by Frank Miller.
I did not know that. Wow. Interesting.
Frank Miller rewrote that because he's like, no, it's got to be this. He was the only person that understood at that point how important Optimus was to kids.
Yeah.
And he tells the story that he counseled them against it. And when they wouldn't listen to him, he's like, "Oh, in that case, it's got to be this." And like his death is a Spartan death. He comes back on his shield, gives up the Matrix lying there on his shield, basically.
Yeah.
And so like that's why it's so epic. And I agree that Transformers wouldn't be Transformers without that movie and without that death. I remember when Wired magazine did an article about the 2007 movie before it came out, the Michael Bay film. The opening line was, 30 years ago, a red robot truck died for our sins. He was our father figure, and we've never forgotten or gotten over it. Now he's back. And I'm like, holy crap, if you start an article like that, this is something that's like the bedrock of so many people. Prime was the perfect, idealized father for all of us. He-Man was the best example of non-toxic masculinity. He wore pink. He wore man semen the whole time, He, like you said, Michael, he wasn't afraid to talk about love. Here he's being portrayed as being prepared to give up literally existence. He's prepared to not just have death, but have non-existence as a consequence of doing the right thing. And that's what gets lost in the controversy over this series, is that what it actually has to say about Adam and He-Man is the biggest rub, to use a wrestling term, than you could ever give somebody. The whole series is, oh my God, this guy is amazing. Can't you see how amazing he is? He's just the best ever of everything. He's so great. And yeah, he is. He's very cool.
The timing of it, I got to say, as much as I love the death, the timing of it was completely botched. Just, we talked about earlier, give us a few more of those authentic Filmation style episodes. Don't do it in the first episode where we're on such a high, and then it's just, it feels mean spirited. It feels like the filmmaker trolling the audience.
I think that's where the audience, to some degree, felt a little bit like and I think I used the term, had the rug pulled out from under them with that first episode. It felt, and that was actually one of my larger critiques of the whole show, is that the 5 episodes, it should have at least been 8. I mean, I know they're doing more, but it felt like there were a few things that were rushed right along.
The decision to release these 5 and leave people hanging is mind-bogglingly. I cannot believe this should have all been released at the same time. Like that
Michael,
that could have definitely been
controversial it was going to be.
And
they want that controversy to continue because nobody talks about Masters of the Universe.
Right.
It's a dead franchise to so many people who are outside the world of fandom. But if you tell people that He-Man's dead and Teela's woke, and leave it on that kind of cliffhanger, people will keep talking about it on social media, keep it going. And so the marketing is overtaking the authenticity of the storytelling, just like the themes are overtaking the authenticity of the characters. There's so many agendas here being serviced.
Yeah, that's a sad truth. I think what would have been more enjoyable and inspirational to people would be to be able to immediately continue the story. But that's just the business aspect of it, which is so unfortunate. That it's true. Eric Bischoff is right. Controversy creates cash. And for all of the vocal minority that are angry, you've got the happy majority who are just sitting there and going, I liked what I saw. And also, like, it's not completely ruined for me because I have faith. I have such strong faith. I know what's going to happen. And if I'm wrong, then I'll stand corrected. But I just, when the first 5 episodes was done, I didn't go, I hate this, I'm out. No. I went, well, let's see where this goes, because I know deep down he's not dead. Adam's not dead. He will raise the sword again. He will be that magical center point. He will help. He will fix everything. This is going to have a happy ending. It can't not. I just have that faith that that'll happen. And maybe that's what's lacking here. Yes, we've said, not written quite in the best possible way, but maybe in the from the audience's perspective, maybe a little bit more faith that things will work out would have helped too.
I think faith is a big ask in 2020 and 2021.
Right? Not the right year. No, I agree. There were moments, and I'm legitimately curious, and I will watch the next episodes for sure. It did leave it. There were some parts in, I think, episode 5, particularly when Adam leaves the eternal realm, stove core, whatever they called it. Then when they say, like, hey, if you leave, that's it, you're not coming back here. And in the final moments when that happens, I was legit like, okay, were they foreshadowing? Are they setting this up? Are they trying to steer you in one direction and pull an about face on you? I'm legit curious to see where it goes. But I think, like, as a death scene and as a noble death, I think you guys hit it right on the head. That moment when he turns around and looks at Teela as Adam, and you can see almost an apology there. I think you could see that he's like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't tell you. And I think that was good. I think it at least kind of primed where that emotion was from Teela. But yeah, I mean, they did a great job. I mean, it was such a cliffhanger ending, and like I said, I would have loved if they'd taken their time here and there a little bit more, even if not just to get to know Teela or the current Teela more, and just see some of the good work she was doing, and I mean, obviously she's kind of known as a I don't know, almost a Robin Hood kind, if you will, like, going helping people and, get a little into the nobility a little bit. But no, I'm legit interested where it's going. I won't say otherwise for sure.
Yeah, I'll watch it with the same level of curiosity that I'll watch the first one. But like I said, for me with MOTU stuff, unless it's mixed with WWE characters, it's sort of oh, cool, something Masters on.
Yeah.
She-Ra was always my big thing of the 2 properties as a kid, and the reboot of that I adore.
Yes,
beyond words. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. I have no problems with that whatsoever. My sole disappointment with reboot She-Ra was, Seahawk's kind of a goof. Oh, but they've made Bo competent in this one. In the last one, it was the other way around. Okay, cool. As long as one of the 2 of them's competent, I can handle it. But yeah, like I adored that show so much.
That was one of those where the stylization and turning the whole mytho a little bit on its in on itself, and her actually learning how to utilize the power, and I thought that was really, really well done. I totally agree. Yeah.
So
that was what part of what I liked about Voltron, really, the Voltron remake, was that it wasn't just, hey, here are the lions, go fight robots. I mean, they were actually had to learn how to work as a team and how to exist in this sort of almost symbiotic sort of relationship with each other, to even utilize Voltron. It was a good sort of lesson on working together and trusting each other. And I thought that Voltron remake was awesome. I think it was absolutely pitch perfect. Yeah.
So much of the DreamWorks stuff has so much soul to it. Whether or not it works for everybody, you can see the intent is there. And at the end of the day, it's all better than War for Cybertron, because sweet Primus. That is dire.
Yeah. I watched a couple of those, and I just didn't grab me.
I'm hoping for an actual official Batman Transformers crossover, just so that they can put out a dozen Batman figures, name them different things. Bumblebee, but it's Batman. Optimus Prime, but it's Batman. And so that, everybody's Batman thing can literally be on the shelves there. Everybody's Batman. Really? We have to save the other Autobots. Well, only in rhyme, right?
Yeah.
He'd sound like Etrigan.
Well, guys, this has been an awesome chat. I'm so happy that we were all able to get together and get the time zones all lined up, and we didn't really talk much about the ugly. We talked about the good and the bad. Maybe we'll end on. Should we end on some of the ugly?
Yeah, let's talk ugly. Let's talk ugly. We should.
Well, what Kevin Smith has been going through, I think what Kevin Smith has gone through is very ugly, and I mean, it should go without saying that that's not appropriate. I mean, Ryan Johnson went through it too, and maybe that's a good thing to keep in mind. As much anger and vitriol Ryan Johnson received for The Last Jedi, it kind of feels like in the entertainment industry, you're only as good as your last movie or show. And once he put out Knives Out, I cannot believe how that just vanished, all the hate, and people were like, oh, that was a cool movie. Cool.
That's a great movie. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. It's really too bad. I think unfortunately, Kevin Smith in a way kind of did it to himself, because he, instead of saying, hey, I'm a kid of the child of the 80s. I know who He-Man is. I've seen some whatever. But this is my take. This is a fresh take. I'm approaching it in a different way, whatever. Instead of trying to paint himself as a huge fan, and we all know the internet's got a long memory with stuff. I mean, people dig up stuff like, out from left field and just come back with it. And it's kind of a, how dare you, on this episode of that toy show 10 years ago, you said I wasn't really into He-Man that much. Oh my God. And I really think that's a shame. And I think that's
why I stated my bona fides up front in this video.
Me too. I mean, of course, people aren't going to care really what I think, but not Kevin Smith, but that was really too bad. And I think people launch onto that, and it's kind of like a, how dare you, you're not even a fan, and you lied and say you are. And oh man, goodness gracious. I mean, in my mind, it's like, Kevin Smith, okay, perhaps he wasn't a huge He-Man fan. Maybe he's become more of a He-Man fan. I don't know. He's earned his due. I mean, he's a great writer, and well, depending who you ask for, a competent filmmaker. I think he does good movies. I like him. He's touched almost every property that you can imagine. I think he's great. I think as a representative of fandom, I think he's credible. He's I mean, I think anybody would be remiss to try to paint him as anything other than a friend of the geek, So I think it's too bad. It just goes to show, I think, people will launch after somebody for next to nothing, and it's just really sad.
Well, it's agenda driven, isn't it? I mean, it's making sure that you've got the clicks, because I know my YouTube algorithm went insane at me and recommended every single He-Man hate video possible.
Yeah.
And I've never used the block this channel button so many times, scrolling down my YouTube feed. Don't recommend this. Don't recommend this. Don't like this channel. Don't want to see this. Because it becomes a self-perpetuating cottage industry. If you guys haven't seen it, Movie Bob on YouTube has done a great video about the hatred about He-Man Revelations. Masters of the Universe Revelations, and he talks about the power of the algorithm. It is a product of this Gamergate, Comicsgate, let's stir up a controversy, fandom menace mentality that says if we can get everybody's eyes on us, we are making a cottage industry out of outrage. And you know, my industry is responsible for that. Journalism is responsible for that.
Way to go, Sean.
Mainstream press. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the fault of the mainstream press that this is happening because they've.
Well, I just want to clarify: you are not part of the problem.
No,
you are part of the solution, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're a good man, Sean. You got my vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But my industry, and I think I have to own this, especially for the purposes of this conversation. My industry learned that weaponizing hate is profiting from and monetizing hate. It's still going on today. You know, you only need to look at how polarized the mainstream media has become to see, oh, this is where the clicks, the ad revenue, the money is coming from. Now we're seeing it move into other arenas. We're seeing it move into the fan arena because Gamergate proves it works. And I mean works in a commercial sense. Comicsgate didn't quite prove it works, but they're still convinced that they're proving that it works. You know, it's going to keep happening because everybody thinks that the louder they can yell, the nastier they can be, the more potential they've got to actually make a buck off of it. And if it means that they can give vent to their ire about things at the same time, great. Some of these people legitimately believe what they say. Other people don't. Some of them believe far worse than what they're saying. And, you know, they have views that once led to world wars. That's not cool. But for the people that aren't on that level, there's the divide between the people who genuinely believe it and promulgate it and the people who think, here's a quick buck. Put the two of them together and you get a YouTube algorithm that's like, don't you hate He-Man? You hate He-Man so much, right? He-Man is terrible. I know this because all the videos I want to recommend to you are hate videos.
And for anyone out there who has a YouTube channel, I just want to give you this little chestnut to chew on. I've done okay. You know, I don't really ever do anything to grab the algorithm or get in the algorithm or appease the algorithm. I just do my thing. And like even everything that I've done on the channel about Revelation, I've tried to see the good in it. I've been honest about what I disliked about it. I'm not trying to just say, hey, it's fantastic. But you do okay on YouTube if you don't take that route of the hate and the anger and the piling on. You do okay. And I think that's just because of the goodness in people. Just have a little bit of faith. I got a thought or a wonder about something. So we've talked about reading between the lines and seeing things in this show that you know, aren't immediately apparent.
No, Michael, I told you there were no pink elephants. We talked about this.
Do you guys think that, and it might not have been the intent at all, and we're just actually coming up with stuff, which is also a good thing. I mean, we've done it with Star Wars and Transformers. Like a lot of those old shows and movies we watched didn't have so much to it, but it's fun to come up with what if this and maybe that. And that's the whole prequel industry. They came up with a whole genre of film because of like the wonderment. Kevin Smith definitely, like you said, Sean, sometimes hasn't helped his case because instead of just having some grace and you know, not responding, not dignifying it with a response, sometimes he stokes the fire. He's been really great. Let me just say, like, he did some kind of live stream immediately after the debut, and then there was a lot of Kevin Smith has a meltdown, and I saw some of the clips, and he did not have a meltdown. That's just dishonest. It's just you know, some people, some very few people believe that a disagreeing is a meltdown, and it isn't. It's a disagreeing. It's having the courage to say, I don't believe that, and I'm going to actually verbalize vocally that I don't believe that. But do you think that, and this might be out there, it's just a passing thought, but is he kind of exposing so-called fans of He-Man who claim to love this and were touched so deeply and learned so much? Is he saying, oh, really? So you really took those lessons to heart, did you? Revealing these people who the anger and the hate and the vitriol, and this is a massive heart attack victim. Kevin Smith had a massive heart attack and almost died. He has children. Say what you will about his creative works and what he's done with your beloved properties, but don't try to give him another heart attack or even kill him. Don't try to kill him and leave his children without a father. If you don't like what he does, walk on, but don't try to stress this guy out, because he had like the pinnacle of stress and his heart almost exploded. So do you think maybe part of it is him going, and it takes a very, very strong individual, self-assured, self-confident individual to pull this off, but do you think maybe he's going, okay, let's see where your understanding is, because He-Man would never do this, even to the worst people. Even to Skeletor, he showed compassion and he saved these guys. Yet these so-called fans are like calling for his head.
I think that's a deep question. I think it's a very social media centric kind of thing. I see a lot of these kind of guys that I don't know, devolve into that kind of negativity with that. And it's troubling, because you want to say, that you're clearly not getting it then. In the case of Kevin Smith, I think somebody like Kevin Smith has really nothing to prove to anybody. I think his professional record is, the properties he's touched, things he's written, I think speak for themselves. And I think that's got a lot more legitimacy than whether or not he might have contradicted himself in a comment or a show from 10 or 12 years ago, whatever it is. But on a deeper level, Sean, actually, this is reminding me of an Instagram post you made a long time ago that I loved. That you were talking about, if you didn't understand, that X-Men was an allegory for, civil rights and gay rights, and then you didn't get X-Men and a lot of things like, I think you repped Star Trek and a lot of properties into it. And I think that's really it, is that you have a lot of these core sensibilities, and it goes back to that whole thing of calling yourself a fan. And Sean, I'm on your page because I don't like to call myself a fan of anything anymore, because in my mind that started to become kind of a negative thing. And so it's interesting how much of this stuff and how much of these fans that claim to be in on all this stuff will totally wrap around and lose the original message and lose what those shows were actually trying to do. I mean, especially Star Trek, if you really want to talk about it. It's amazing to me, but it doesn't surprise me, because it's just like, it's, the angry people, their voice is louder, and I think social media is kind of empowered that kind of attitude. Honestly, I'm surprised that and I don't know if he was stoking the fire, but I'm kind of surprised Kevin Smith even bothered. I'm surprised he didn't be like, hey, you know what? We made a show. I made the best show I can. F off. I mean, literally, that's really what his response should have been.
I would love to think that Michael's right, and that Kevin was doing it from that altruistic place.
Yeah.
As a person who has loved Kevin's films from the very beginning, and never met the man, but have a lot of time for him, he is a massive stoner and an even more massive poop stirrer. I really believe that he's responding because it's funny, because it makes people look like jerks, and because it keeps the hashtags and the conversations and the attention going.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it's good old-fashioned wrestling promotion.
The best Kevin Smith moment, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I just got to knock this in here. The one where he went to his own protest, where people were protesting Dogma, and he went into protest. That's, to me, that's my definitive Kevin Smith moment. I laughed for about 10 minutes solid when I saw that.
Perfectly said. And that's what I think. Like, I don't think he's doing it from any altruistic place to expose anybody beyond maybe the comedian who played the priest in Dogma, the American comedian, the 7 words you can't say on television.
George Carlin.
Yeah.
George Carlin's his hero.
Okay, that makes sense.
He bases his life on George Carlin, so that probably pretty much answers the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so it might not have been by design, but it still had that effect. I mean, whether he intended it or not, people are watching and they're noticing.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. And it makes me go, why would you attack this guy if you hate? I mean, I really, really disliked G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra. I never once felt motivated to go and share that, disappointment. I wasn't angry, but I don't go after the people that make this stuff. That's time that I could be using to go after or show appreciation to people who do things that I appreciate. Like, like every single moment that you are trashing someone for something that you hate, that could have been a moment you could have messaged the TV RoboCop and said, dude, you were really awesome, which, I recently used that spare moment to tell Richard Eden, you were fantastic. Like everyone is always Peter Weller and he definitely deserves it. He created the character and he's the, iconic RoboCop that everyone thinks of. But the TV RoboCop, say what you will about the show and the budget, but he is fantastic on that show. Like he really owns the character. So, that's maybe just an idea there instead of, whenever the next reboot comes out that sucks, instead of even just kind of into the ether, throwing out a tweet or a post or if you have a YouTube channel, making a video about how much you hate it, maybe just make the effort and extend an olive branch to someone who did something you really liked in the past, because maybe they haven't heard that in quite some time and they'll be quite tickled, like some of the writers or some of the voice actors on the old shows and say, hey, I really loved your performance as Shipwreck or the Crimson Twins or whatever. Like, and they're
not getting to go to cons at the moment and hear that.
That's right.
Face to face.
So. That's a really powerful message in general if you want to talk about it kind of on a global level. A long time ago, I kind of made up my mind. I thought, you know what? I'm never going to send just a nasty email, complaint ever. Instead, what I will a lot of times go out of my way to do is if I get really good service somewhere, I'll send a message and say, make a special note and say, hey, the server XYZ was really helpful and yada, yada, yada. And I'll tell you, and this sounds horrible and it makes it sound like I'm motivated from a different level, but I've gotten more in response to nice letters than I ever have complaint letters. I have a Roomba. One time I wrote a letter to him and just said, hey, this is one of the best things I've ever bought. I love this thing, yada, yada. It's works so well. It's like I can program it to go. I never touch my my carpets. They sent me like a tune-up kit, an extra battery. It was like this whole big letter. We're so happy. Will you like it? And I can only imagine that probably 9 out of every 10 letters they get, if not more, are all about how much people hate something. You're
the first person that told them it sucked, but you meant it in the way that it was supposed to.
Yes, yeah.
It sucks so good,
literally. But I mean, there's been a few things. I remember once I wrote my local Chipotle. I was really impressed. We'd gone in there on our lunch hour, and the line was out the door, and I was like, oh God. So I waited in line anyway, and they were super fast. We got our lunch like within 10 minutes and everything. So I wrote a letter and told them that just hey the the Westwood Chipotle is fantastic, yada yada yada. Like 2 weeks later, I noticed my letter was on the wall next to the cash register. I'd gotten a response from them, and they sent me a whole booklet of coupons, like 5, so it's like, I think sometimes people hear the complaint so often that they get something positive, and it's like, oh, thank you, So it's strong. I think it's a strong habit to try to do, and
I'll give you an anecdotal version of why that works. I have 2 folders in my work email, one called compliments and one called complaints. And so I keep the nice emails I get, and I keep the complaint emails as well. I am very fortunate that there are more compliment emails than there are complaint emails, because people do take the time to do that.
Saying a lot. Yeah.
The Roomba sucks so good, and I think we can say the same thing about Revelation. At least as far as this chat goes, it sucks so good.
As soon as I finished watching it, my floors were cleaner than they've ever been before.
It's fantastic. It was like magic.
Thanks,
the magic out of Eternia into my Roomba.
Right into the Roomba.
Thanks so much for making time to chat today, guys. I really appreciate it. And
very welcome, Michael.
And you guys are also the light. in this planet, much like He-Man is the light in Eternia. I just really appreciate chatting with you guys about all this stuff. Hopefully this opens up some thought for some people who, just like me, I had that feeling, but I couldn't quite put it into words. Didn't understand what I was feeling, but I knew this isn't hate. This isn't love, but it's wonder. And that's usually a good thing.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to chat.
Well, I'm very much inspired to watch it again, and Sean, to pick up on some of those wonderful themes you've pointed out. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I look forward to my compliment email and my Chipotle vouchers once you've enjoyed it on that level.
And
see if I can dig some up.
And my philosophy is 2 compliments for every criticism. So you feel free to criticize, but you better have 2 compliments as well, because I think Revelation is maybe one of the more easy properties to compliment 2 things for every criticism that you have, because there's good stuff there too.
Kevin Conroy is Merman.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Exactly. Thanks again, guys. Thanks everyone out there for listening along. Hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. If you loved Revelation, please feel free to share your thoughts. You're safe here. This is a place where you can share those thoughts, and you don't have to feel like you're gonna come under attack for that. That's not right. You should be able to love what you love, especially like a cartoon. I mean, that's why we love this stuff and still do. That's why many of us rediscovered it. We got into it because it wasn't Shakespeare. The shows, we got into the toys because it wasn't Ming Dynasty vases and stuff like that. It's not something that if you broke it, it was like an absolute tragedy and you're bankrupt for it. It's just fun. It's easy breezy, and it should be very easy to just move on from if it doesn't work for you. Just as simple as that. And Revelation can be that for a lot of people. If you don't dig it, go watch Snake Eyes. Give that a try. No, go watch Resolute or Renegades or something like that. As far as He-Man goes, I'll always say, if you don't dig Revelation, especially like when the rest of it comes out, if you still don't like it when the story is complete, go check out 2000X He-Man, and you'll probably love that. But that might also give you something to think about. That didn't just do big box office business, the show or the toys. So there's something to that, and it's good to think a little deeper about this stuff. Why are the successful things successful, and why are the ththings that are so right, feel so right, not as successful?
And as He-Man would say, until next time, friends.
Nerdmas Day.
Nerdmas Day. Thank you.
Thank you.